I woke before dawn at Alder Ridge, the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. The tracks were fresh, wide paws pressed deep into frost near my woodpile. A gray wolf had crossed my clearing in the night. I checked my rifle out of habit, then left it leaning by the door. My name is Elias Crowe. I live alone in a cabin above Black Pine Creek, 3 hours from the nearest town, Hartwell. When predators show up, people expect gunfire. That morning, I chose silence, boots, and a steady breath. I followed the tracks downhill, keeping the wind in my face. The forest was awake, ravens shifting, branches ticking in the cold. I moved slow, counting steps, watching shadows. The wolf didn't run. It wanted me to follow. Near a fallen spruce, I found the reason. A steel trap, old and rusted, clamped on the wolf's rear leg. Blood darkened the snow. The animal stood its ground, hackles up, eyes bright and calculating. I raised my hands and spoke low, my voice steady, easy. The word didn't matter. My posture did. I angled my body, knees bent, weight back. I set my pack down and waited until the wolf's breathing slowed to match mine. The trap was wired shut. I used pliers, working inch by inch, never breaking eye contact for long. Pain makes animals unpredictable. Fear makes men sloppy. I kept my movements clean and slow, feeling every second stretch. The wolf snapped once, close enough for me to smell iron on its breath. I didn't flinch. I paused, backed off half a step, then returned. When the jaws finally released, the leg dropped free, trembling. The wolf backed away, limping, then stopped. It turned once, held my gaze, and vanished into the timber. No shot fired, no victory pose, just quiet. I packed the trap and hiked home as the sun cleared the ridge. That morning taught me something simple. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the discipline to lower the weapon and finish the job anyway. I live off the grid above Alder Ridge, where the tree line thins and the winters test everything you think you know. My cabin sits near Black Pine Creek, a mile from the old logging road that once fed the mill in Hartwell. I came here after years of cutting timber and keeping my head down. Out here, mistakes don't get excuses. They get consequences. People ask why I don't carry a gun everywhere. The truth is simple. I know when to use force, and I know when not to. Survival isn't about noise or bravado. It's about reading the land, understanding animals, and controlling yourself when adrenaline tells you to act fast. That balance kept me alive longer than any trigger ever did. The morning I crossed paths with the wolf wasn't planned. It started like any other day. Firewood to split, traps to check, weather to read. The forest changed the plan. It always does. When you live alone long enough, you learn to listen before you move. That habit matters when the stakes rise without warning. Before we go further, if you're watching this channel for real survival stories, quiet strength, and life beyond the noise, subscribe now. It helps this story reach people who understand what it means to stand alone and still do the right thing. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every one. What happened on that ridge wasn't about bravery. It was about choice. In the next chapters, I'll walk you through exactly what I saw, what I did, and why I left the rifle behind. 5 moments, one decision that could have gone wrong fast, and a lesson the forest made sure I wouldn't forget. The cold hit harder once I stepped past the tree line. Alder Ridge doesn't ease you into the day. It tests you immediately. My boots broke the crusted snow as I moved toward Black Pine Creek, eyes locked on the ground. The wolf tracks were deeper now, staggered, cutting sharp angles through the brush. Injured, close. Every instinct told me to turn back and grab the rifle. I didn't. I adjusted my pack and checked the wind again. North to south. Good. My scent would trail behind me. I kept my pace steady, not fast, not cautious enough to look weak. The forest was tense. No birds, no movement. That silence meant the wolf knew I was there and hadn't decided what to do yet. I followed the trail down a narrow ravine where the snow turned dark and wet. Blood. Fresh. My jaw tightened. Poachers used this area years ago before Hartwell shut down the mill and people moved on. Some traps never got pulled. Some men don't care what suffers after they leave. I crouched and listened. A low growl rolled through the trees, slow and controlled. I saw him then, gray coat matted with frost, back leg twisted wrong, teeth bared but body still. He wasn't charging. He was warning me. 10 yards. Too close to run, too far to rush. I raised my hands and stopped breathing through my mouth. I could hear my pulse in my ears. I planted my boots and waited. The wolf tested me with a snap, fast and sharp. Snow sprayed my pant leg. I didn't move. I shifted my weight back, knees bent, eyes low but never turning away. I spoke once, quiet, not to calm him. To steady myself. The growl softened, turned into breath. I eased the pack off my shoulders and set it down slow. Inside were pliers, wire cutters, and bandage cloth. Tools, not weapons. I inched forward, stopping whenever the wolf tensed. The trap was half buried under ice, steel jaws clamped deep. The smell of rust and blood filled my nose. My fingers went numb as soon as I touched the metal. I worked the wire carefully, twisting, cutting, feeling the tension fight me. The wolf lunged again, closer this time. I froze mid-motion, arms burning, breath locked in my chest. Seconds dragged. He backed off. I went back to work. The trap gave way with a sharp crack. The jaws sprang open. The wolf yelped and collapsed, then scrambled free, dragging the injured leg. I stayed where I was, hands empty, heart hammering. He turned once, eyes bright and furious, then disappeared into the timber. Only after the sound faded did my legs start shaking. I sat down in the snow, sweat freezing on my neck, and stared at the broken trap in my hands. Chapter 1 ended there, not with relief, but with the weight of knowing how close it came to going wrong. I didn't move for a long minute after the wolf vanished. The forest stayed tight around me, like it was waiting to see what I'd do next. My hands shook as the adrenaline drained, fingers stiff and useless in the cold. I forced myself to breathe slow and even. Panic out here doesn't scream. It whispers bad ideas. When I finally stood, the ridge felt different, not quieter, watchful. I scanned the tree line, half expecting the wolf to reappear with teeth bared and nothing left to lose. Instead, I saw the signs I'd missed before. Drag marks, broken brush. This wasn't a random crossing. He'd been circling the ravine for days, trapped, learning my patterns. I followed the blood trail uphill, not to chase, but to understand. Each step told a story, where he stumbled, where he rested, where pain nearly took him down. At a stand of black spruce, the tracks doubled back toward my cabin. My jaw clenched. If he'd learned my route, he'd learned my home. I detoured wide, moving along the high ground, keeping sightlines open. The wind shifted and brought me the smell of wet fur. Close again. My muscles tightened. I rested my hand on the knife at my belt, not drawing it, just feeling its weight. The rule stayed the same. Don't escalate unless you have to. I reached a frozen seep where the ground dipped and the snow thinned. There were more tracks here, smaller. A second wolf, then a third. A pack had been moving through Alder Ridge while I was splitting firewood and minding my own business. That changed everything. An injured pack is unpredictable. A cornered one is dangerous. A low howl rolled through the timber, cut short, answered by another farther off. Not a challenge, a location call. They were finding each other, and they were doing it near my land. I backed away from the seep, slow and deliberate, keeping my silhouette broken by trees. Halfway back, I heard it, the scrape of claws on ice behind me. I turned just enough to see the gray wolf again, standing 20 yards out, legs stiff, eyes locked on mine. He wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the brush to his left. I counted 2, maybe more. I didn't run. Running triggers pursuit. I lifted my arms, made myself bigger without stepping forward. I spoke once, firm and low. The pack watched, ears forward, bodies coiled. Seconds stretched thin. Then the injured wolf shifted, placing himself between me and the others. He held them there. Long enough. The pack melted back into the trees, silent as smoke. The gray stayed a moment more, then turned and followed. I didn't wait. I moved for home with controlled speed, every sense stretched. The tension didn't break when my cabin came into view. It followed me inside, settled into my bones, and stayed. Chapter 2 ended with a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. Alder Ridge wasn't just my territory, and the forest had just reminded me of that. That night came down hard on Alder Ridge. Wind hammered the cabin walls, driving snow sideways, burying sound. I barred the door, banked the stove, and killed the lantern early. Darkness keeps you honest. I sat at the table with my back to the wall, listening. Somewhere beyond Black Pine Creek, something moved with purpose, not rushing, not lost. Near midnight, the howl started again, closer than before. Short calls, controlled, not hunger, coordination. I stepped to the window and peeled back a finger of frost. Tracks crossed my clearing, circling wide, testing. They weren't trying to get in. They were mapping me. I pulled on my coat and stepped outside. Cold punched my lungs. I carried no rifle, just a headlamp and the knife at my belt. The snow muffled my steps, but the wind betrayed me. The beam caught eyes at the tree line, one pair, then another. Low to the ground, waiting for a mistake. I moved toward the woodpile, slow, deliberate. A shape broke from the brush to my right, then stopped. The injured gray. His legs shook, but his stance held. Behind him, 2 darker wolves ghosted between trunks, flanking. They were testing distance, reaction, resolve. I squared up and planted my feet, hands open, shoulders wide. I spoke once, sharp enough to cut through the wind. The pack answered with silence. The gray took a step closer. 10 yards, close enough to end wrong if I slipped. My breath steamed in short bursts. I forced it down. A sudden rush came from my left, fast, low. I pivoted just in time, swinging my arm wide, shouting. The wolf veered off at the last second, snow spraying my boots. A warning pass. They were escalating. My heart slammed hard enough to hurt. I backed toward the cabin, never turning, never breaking eye contact for long. The door loomed behind me. I didn't reach for it. Running for shelter can flip a switch. Instead, I crouched, grabbed a burning log from the fire pit, and held it low. Fire changes math. The wolves hesitated. The gray snarled, a deep sound that vibrated the air. Another howl cut in from the ridge, closer still. Reinforcements. The pack tightened, bodies angling, eyes locked. I swung the log once, sparks flying. The closest wolf stopped short, skidding. I held my ground until the pain in my arms screamed. Then, without warning, the gray turned and snapped at the others. One sharp command. The pack broke formation and slid back into the timber, swallowed by snow and shadow. The gray lingered, eyes burning, then vanished. I stood alone in the clearing, shaking, the logs smoking in my hands. The threat didn't end when they left. It settled deeper. Chapter 3 closed with a line drawn in the snow, and the knowledge that next time they might not pull back. Morning exposed what the night tried to hide. At first light, I walked the perimeter of my clearing and found the line. Tracks etched deep, deliberate, a wide arc that cut between my cabin and the creek. Not random. A boundary. The pack had drawn it while I slept. I stood there longer than I should have, understanding settling in. This wasn't a standoff anymore. It was negotiation. I followed the arc downhill to where the snow thinned near Black Pine Creek. The injured gray's prints were lighter now, steadier. He'd survived the night. At a bend in the water, I found the trap I'd carried home. I'd left it by the shed, meaning to haul it out later. Someone, or something, had dragged it back toward the creek and dropped it in plain sight. A message. I knelt and studied the bank. More tracks appeared. 3, maybe 4 wolves. No rush marks, no chaos. They'd waited while the gray moved. I saw it then. The pack wasn't hunting me. They were testing terms. If I kept pushing into their paths, the pressure would rise. If I respected the line, maybe the forest would breathe again. I went back to the cabin and made a choice that felt heavy, but clean. I packed the trap, rope, and a slab of smoked venison. No weapons. I took a long route to the creek, staying open, visible, letting the wind carry my scent ahead. When I reached the bend, I set the meat on a flat rock and stepped back. Not bait. Payment. The gray appeared without sound. He stood across the creek, legs stiff but working, eyes steady. I raised my hands, palms out, and didn't speak. Words would cheapen it. He crossed the water slow, tested the snow, then approached the rock. He didn't eat right away. He watched me until my shoulders softened and my breath slowed. I backed away first. That mattered. 10 steps, then 20. When I turned fully. No flinch, no sprint. I felt eyes on my spine the whole walk back. At the tree line, I stopped and looked once more. The gray had taken the meat. The others stayed hidden. The line held. That afternoon, I moved my routines. Firewood shifted to the south side. Traps pulled and destroyed. My trail rerouted above the ridge, away from the creek bend. I wasn't surrendering ground. I was choosing a map that didn't bleed. The forest noticed. The silence loosened. At dusk, a single howl rose from Alder Ridge, low, measured, answered far off and then gone. No circling, no challenge. I stood on my porch and let the cold bite. Chapter 4 ended with the point made clear. Coexistence isn't mercy. It's discipline, boundaries, and the courage to change first. The days that followed were tight but quiet. Snow kept falling, erasing mistakes as fast as they could be made. I stuck to the new routes, rose earlier, moved slower. Every step felt watched but not hunted. There's a difference. One sharpens you, the other ends you. I found the gray's tracks near the ridge trail on the third morning. Cleaner now, more weight on the injured leg. He'd healed enough to travel with the pack. That mattered. An animal that recovers remembers who didn't finish the job. Out here, memory carries weight. I kept my hands busy and my presence predictable. Wood cut at the same hour. Water drawn from the south bend. No surprises. Predators respect patterns. Chaos invites teeth. Each day without contact tightened the agreement we'd carved into the snow. One afternoon, I spotted them at distance, 3 shapes on the far slope, moving parallel to me. No flanking, no rush, just confirmation. I stopped and waited. They stopped too. We held that line for a full minute before parting ways. The tension eased a notch. That night, the wind died and the stars burned hard. I stepped outside and listened. No howls, no movement, just the creek working under ice. I realized my shoulders had dropped without me noticing. That's how you know something's changed. I burned the last of the trap steel in the stove the next morning, watched it glow and warp. Some tools solve problems, others create them. I kept the pliers, I ditched the rest. The forest doesn't forget what you leave behind. Before the thaw, I found one more sign near the creek bend, a single track, pressed clean and deep, facing away from my land. Not a warning, a departure. The pack had shifted higher, following elk sign north toward Granite Pass. I stood there a long time, hands in my pockets, breath steady. Chapter 5 closed without noise or victory. Just the understanding that strength isn't proven by what you destroy, but by what you allow to live, and the ground you choose not to claim. I still walk Alder Ridge every morning, and I still listen before I move. The forest didn't change after the wolves left. I did. Out here, survival isn't about winning confrontations. It's about reading signs early and choosing the response that keeps tomorrow intact. I could have fired a shot and ended the threat fast. I also would have started a cycle that never really ends. Silence, discipline, and restraint cost more in the moment, but they pay longer. If there's one thing this land teaches, it's that control isn't weakness. Knowing when not to pull the trigger, when to step back, when to redraw your own lines, that's the difference between living with the wild and fighting it every day. The wolf didn't become my ally. The forest didn't bow. We reached an understanding built on consequences and respect. That kind of balance is fragile, and it demands attention every single day. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel. These aren't legends or lessons from a book. They're lived moments from places most people never see. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Different places teach different truths. Mine just happens to be Alder Ridge, where survival isn't loud, and the strongest choice is often the quiet one.